I'm recording this stewardship message on Tuesday afternoon. And so by the time you hear this message on Sunday, our lives may be completely upended. But there remains a constant, the commandment to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. So I am emphasizing the service and missions aspect of your pledge for the coming year. This past year, Service and Missions has given money to the food bank, to Pacham, to the Haven, which has been providing free breakfasts and free lunches since March for about 150 persons in the community. And we've given money to Ojola and to the Community Emergency Response Fund. Now, why would you want to give your charitable dollars through a church when there are so many worthy recipients? I can think of two key reasons. One is that through the church we can multiply our efforts far beyond what any of us could accomplish alone. Sojourners provided dinners twice for 60 persons who were homeless and at high risk of dying from COVID if they should get it, and are therefore sheltered in a motel in Charlottesville and have been since March. Providing the meals was not easy since both the cooks and the recipients are self-isolating. Those two meals would have cost us $1,200 to $1,800 if we had simply given the money for them. But by rolling up our sleeves and purchasing ingredients individually, we can work together even though we are all socially isolated from one another. Our ongoing project with Ojola in Kenya is another example of how collaborating can create something out of, in this case, virtually nothing. About 2 decades ago, Cindy Holer-Fatan was asked by her friend Rose Oderu in Kenya if she could help Rose to pay for the food and shelter for children left orphans by AIDS. Cindy could not afford it, but she knew that she could turn to her church for help. The project has evolved over the years, and today we support 11 students who have lost one or both parents and whose families cannot afford to pay for their education. Kenya is not a country where there is free public education. So this is not a situation where some other group might step up if we did not. We are the safety net for those 11 students. So in addition to collaboration, there's another reason to give through the church, and that is that we who are people of God see and appreciate the human faces of those whom we serve. Seeing their humanity helps keep us walking humbly with God. We have not been able to meet with the Pacham women this calendar year, but even in this year of social isolation, I have a few vignettes to show you what I mean about seeing our common humanity. When I first started organizing those 60 meals, I asked about dietary restrictions and was told that no one had restrictions. But there is one man who's vegan. Vegan! He has no home of his own and little control over his food supply, and yet he is nevertheless valiantly preserving his sense of who he is. And we can recognize and validate that commitment of his by providing him with some vegan entrees, vegan scones, even vegan peanut butter cookies. On one of the days when Cindy and I delivered meals to the motel, we saw one of the recipients taking the air in the parking lot, sitting on her walker with a little dog on a leash. She too is hanging on to a sense of who she is by creating for herself a little family. And in the weekly update of a few weeks back, you could see pictures of those Kenyan students who have received gifts of food from Sojourners since the pandemic. They usually eat at school, but the schools are closed this year. Just like us, they are wearing their masks. This idea of seeing our common humanity brings me to a third notion of why we give through a church. When we give, we are showing the world what it means to be a people of God. When Cindy offered to help me organize those meals, she actually recruited several of her neighbors to make meatloaf. You see what she was doing without even realizing it. She was showing them this is what Christians do. We are also showing our children. We all know that one of Sean Lyons' key reasons for having organized the Pacham sheltering of the women at Sojourners for the past 2 years is that he wants his children to know that they can help, that their help is important. As I was thinking about this talk, I was reminded by a friend of an incident from almost 20 years ago. We have been hosting Pacham guests for that long. The pickup point for Pacham guests, for the men anyway, used to be the First Presbyterian Church, and the church's parking lot is just down the street from my house. I did not witness this incident, but was told of it by the mother of one of my son's friends who heard it from her son. It happened that our son John Michael and his friends were walking to our house late one afternoon in the winter, probably planning to play video games together. John Michael was maybe 11 or 12 at the time. They came upon a man somewhat ragged, a little tipsy, pretty disoriented, hanging around at the bottom of our street. It was dark, and the other children were afraid of him. But John Michael just told them, "You don't need to be afraid. He's a Pachem person." And John Michael took him by the arm to show him where to find the Pachem intake. And then he explained to his friends about Pachem. It did not occur to him even to tell us about the incident. You see, we are showing our children what people of God do. Our children are learning this from us all the time. And speaking of Pachem, I am really happy to tell you that the council has decided that Sojourners will host the Pachem women for a full month beginning January 2nd. We won't be getting to know them this time because Pachem staff will be taking care of them, not us. We'll be providing some food at a distance. But they will shelter in our sanctuary on our new carpet. I am proud to pledge to a church that has decided to give up its sanctuary so that others can find some. Sanctuary, that is. And Nate Lyons is already devising clever ways to get you all to donate to the Toilet Paper Fund.